When Diane Hargrove, a powerful bank manager, tears up a $10 million check from a dust-covered construction worker, she's certain she's protecting her institution from fraud. But one phone call from the building's billionaire owner shatters her world. The day laborer she humiliated is Vincent Moss, a self-made construction mogul worth hundreds of millions. Her snap judgment costs her everything: her job, her reputation, her future. Yet in the ashes of her career, an impossible opportunity emerges, one that will force her to confront who she really is and what true worth actually means. Welcome, everyone, to a story that will challenge how you see the world. Before we begin, may you find wisdom in unexpected places, grace in your mistakes, and the courage to become better than you were yesterday. May you never judge a book by its cover, and may you extend to others the kindness you hope to receive. If this story speaks to you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more powerful narratives like this one. And drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. We love connecting with you. Now let's dive into a tale of pride, prejudice, and redemption. The check tore cleanly down the middle. Diane Hargrove held both halves between her manicured fingers, the paper still warm from the printer in the lobby. $10 million. The numbers were typed clearly across the center line she'd just destroyed. 5 zeros on one side, another 5 on the other. "Sir, I need you to step back from the counter." The man didn't move. He stood in his paint-stained work boots and faded jacket, one hand still extended where he'd offered the check, his calloused palm open and empty now. A smear of drywall dust streaked his collar. "This is a business account window," Diane said. She kept her voice level, professional. The branch was full. Tuesday mornings always were. Mrs. Chen waited 3 customers back with her envelope of cash. The Richardsons stood at the deposit slip station, their twin daughters shifting from foot to foot in their private school uniforms. Personal deposits are handled at the general teller line. It's a business check. From a personal account. Diane slid the torn halves across the marble counter. "And we don't accept novelty items. There's a costume shop on 5th if you need props." His jaw tightened. The fluorescent lights overhead caught the gray, threading through his dark hair, the deep lines around his eyes that came from years of squinting against the sun. He looked at the destroyed check, then back at her. "I'd like to speak to someone else." "I'm the branch manager." Diane straightened the stack of deposit slips beside her computer. "If you have a legitimate transaction, I'm happy to help, but I won't waste my staff's time processing fraudulent instruments." The man's hand closed slowly. His knuckles were scarred, rope burned in places. He picked up both halves of the check and folded them carefully, tucking them into his jacket pocket. "The account number is real," he said quietly. "So is the one I could write claiming I'm the Queen of England." Diane gestured toward the exit. "I need this space for actual customers." He stood there another moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger exactly, but a kind of stillness that made the air between them feel suddenly cold. Then he turned and walked toward the door, his boots leaving faint dust prints on the polished floor. Diane's assistant manager, Robert, appeared at her elbow the moment the glass door swung shut. "Was that a scam artist?" Diane logged into her terminal. "They're getting bolder. $10 million check from a commercial account, written to a day laborer. Please." Robert's fingers drummed against the counter. "Did you verify the account?" "I verified that no one writes $10 million checks on Tuesday morning while wearing plaster in their hair." Diane pulled up the first customer in queue. "Mrs. Chen, so sorry for the wait." The elderly woman approached with her envelope, but her eyes tracked toward the door where the man had disappeared. He seemed very calm. Confidence is the scammer's best tool. Diane smiled and reached for the deposit. Now, how can I help you today? The call came 47 minutes later. Diane was in her office, reviewing the quarterly compliance reports when her desk phone lit up. Internal line, extension 001. She stared at the number. Extension 001 was reserved for the building owner, the entire building, not just the branch. In 3 years as manager, she'd never seen that line active. She lifted the receiver. Diane Hargrove. This is James Keller. The voice was clipped, precise. I own this property. Am I correct that you turned away a customer approximately 45 minutes ago? Diane's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice steady. I processed several customers this morning, Mr. Keller. Can you be more specific? The man with the check. Her fingers tightened on the phone. Sir, that was a fraudulent instrument. A $10 million check from a commercial account, presented by someone who clearly... Did you verify the account before destroying the check? The question landed like a stone in still water. I made a judgment call based on... Did you verify the account? Diane's throat was dry. Through her office window, she could see the branch floor. Robert was helping a young couple with a car loan application. The deposit line had cleared. The circumstances were suspicious, she said. I've seen dozens of these scams. The presentation, the amount, His name is Vincent Moss. Keller's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. He's been working construction sites for 32 years. He also owns 40% of Moss and Thornhill Commercial Development. Last quarter, his company completed the Harbor District renovation. 8 buildings, 4 blocks, $200 million in contracts. The check was his quarterly distribution. The office felt smaller, the walls closer. I had no way of knowing. You had a phone, you had a computer, you had access to the account database. Keller paused. What you didn't have was the 5 minutes it would have taken to verify what he told you was true. Diane's pulse hammered in her ears. Mr. Keller, I apologize for any inconvenience, but I was protecting the bank's interests. These types of scams. Vincent Moss has banked with us for 18 years. His company maintains 7 accounts in this branch alone. His personal account currently holds $900,000. Another pause. Had. Past tense. As of 20 minutes ago, Moss and Thornhill transferred all corporate accounts to First National. Mr. Moss is closing his personal accounts this afternoon. The words hit like physical blows. I can call him, Diane said quickly. I can explain, apologize. You can clean out your desk. Mr. Keller, you humiliated a man in front of a branch full of witnesses because he didn't look wealthy enough to deserve your time. You destroyed his property without verification. You refused him access to his own money based entirely on his appearance. Keller's voice stayed level, but something sharp lived underneath it. You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings. Security will escort you out. Your termination letter will be delivered to your home address. Please, Diane's voice cracked. I've worked here for 3 years. My record is spotless. One mistake, your record is spotless because the people you've judged couldn't afford to fight back. The line went quiet for a moment. When Keller spoke again, his tone had shifted into something colder. Mr. Moss asked me to give you a message. He said to tell you that the check was real. The signature was his, and the only fraudulent thing in that building today was your professional courtesy. The call disconnected. Diane sat with the dead phone against her ear, staring at the quarterly reports on her screen. The numbers blurred. Her hand shook as she set the receiver down. Through the window, Robert glanced up. Their eyes met. He looked away first. The desk had seemed bigger when it was hers. Diane knelt beside the cardboard box security had provided, pulling framed certificates off the wall. Branch Manager of the Quarter, Excellence in Customer Service, Regional Performance Award. Each one came down with a soft scrape of nail against plaster. Robert stood in the doorway. He'd been there for 3 minutes, shifting his weight, not speaking. "You can say it," Diane said. She didn't look at him. "Say what?" "That you told me to verify." Robert's reflection appeared in the glass of the Customer Service Award. "I asked if you'd verified." "Same thing." Diane wrapped the frame in newspaper and set it in the box. The newspaper was from the break room, yesterday's financial section. A headline about commercial development projects in the Harbor District caught her eye. She turned it face down. "The staff is asking questions," Robert said. "Tell them I accepted another position." "Diane, tell them whatever you want." She pulled open her desk drawer. Pens, sticky notes, a half-empty bottle of ibuprofen. The drawer where she'd kept her authority for 3 years, reduced to office supplies. "You'll be branch manager by end of week. Congratulations." Robert moved into the office. He closed the door behind him, which was pointless. The walls were glass and half the staff was watching. "The check looked fake," he said quietly. Diane's hand stilled over the drawer. "Don't." "I'm serious." $10 million written to a guy in work boots? I would have questioned it too. "But you would have checked." Robert didn't answer. Diane pulled out her nameplate, Diane Hargrove, branch manager, and stared at it. The brass was cool against her palm. She'd ordered it herself, paid extra for the raised lettering. "How many?" she asked. "How many what?" "How many times have I done this? Judge someone. Turned them away. Made them feel small because they didn't fit my idea of what wealth looks like." Robert's silence was answer enough. Diane set the nameplate in the box. "The Richardsons' daughter asked me why the dusty man was lying. I heard her. Mrs. Chen looked at me like I'd kicked a dog." She finally turned to face Robert. "I called a man a fraud in front of 20 people. I destroyed his property, and I did it because I was so certain I knew better than he did about his own money." "You made a judgment call." "I made an assumption." Diane stood, the box in her arms. "There's a difference." The security guard appeared in the doorway. Young guy, new to the branch. He looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Hargrove, I need to walk you out." Diane nodded. She looked at Robert one last time. "When Moss comes in to close his accounts," she said, "treat him like he owns the building." "He doesn't own the building." "No, but he probably knows who does." The apartment was too quiet. Diane set the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and stared at it. 3 years of professional identity, reduced to objects that fit in 18 inches of corrugated paper. She should unpack it, put the frame somewhere, but her hands wouldn't move. Her phone buzzed. Text from her mother. "Dinner Sunday? Bring Michael if he's in town." Michael was her ex-husband. They'd been divorced for 2 years. Her mother still asked about him. Diane deleted the message. Another buzz. LinkedIn notification. Robert Chen has a new position. Branch manager at Coastal Federal Bank. 3 hours. It had taken 3 hours for them to replace her. Diane opened her laptop. She needed to update her resume, start sending applications. Branch manager positions didn't stay open long, and she had bills, but her fingers hovered over the keyboard, not typing. The cursor blinked in the empty search bar. She typed, "Vincent Moss." The results loaded. First hit was a business profile. Moss and Thornhill Commercial Development. She clicked through. The website was professional but understated. No flashy graphics, no corporate buzzwords, just project photos and client testimonials. Vincent's bio was buried on the About page, 3 paragraphs down. The photo showed him in a button-down shirt, no tie, Same weathered face, same gray threaded hair. But his eyes were different in the picture. Lighter somehow, like he'd smiled just before the shutter clicked. Vincent Moss co-founded Moss & Thornhill in 1997 with partner David Thornhill. Starting with small residential renovations, the company has grown to specialize in commercial rehabilitation and historic preservation. Mr. Moss maintains hands-on involvement in all projects, personally overseeing construction quality and worker safety. Diane scrolled to the project gallery. The Harbor District renovation was featured prominently, before and after shots of 8 historic buildings transformed from condemned properties to mixed-use developments. Retail on the ground floor, apartments above. In one photo, Vincent stood with a crew of workers, all of them in hard hats covered in the same plaster dust he'd worn into the bank. She clicked back to the bio. At the bottom, a single line. Mr. Moss is a graduate of Lincoln Technical Institute and holds a Master Carpenter certification. No mention of millions. No talk of quarterly distributions or corporate accounts. Just a guy who'd started with a tool belt and built something real. Diane closed the laptop. The apartment pressed in around her. She'd lived here for 4 years, since the divorce, and it still didn't feel like home. Beige walls, rental furniture. Nothing on the walls because she'd never gotten around to hanging anything. She thought about Vincent's hands, the scars, the rope burns, 32 years of construction work, and she'd looked at those hands and seen fraud. Her phone buzzed again. Email this time. Subject line. Termination documentation. She didn't open it. Instead, she pulled up her bank's website and logged into her account. Checking balance. $4,247. Savings. $12,903. She'd been putting away money for a down payment on a house, something with a yard maybe. Room for a dog. It would last 3 months. 4, if she was careful. Diane stared at the numbers until they blurred, then closed her phone and went to bed. The coffee shop interview was a disaster. The hiring manager, a woman named Brenda with severe bangs and purple reading glasses, sat across from Diane with her resume printed on cream-colored paper. "Your experience is impressive," Brenda said. 3 years as branch manager. Excellent performance reviews. She looked up. "Why did you leave Coastal Federal?" Diane had prepared for this. She'd rehearsed the answer in her bathroom mirror that morning, eye-testing different versions for tone and believability. "I was looking for new challenges," she said. "An opportunity to grow in a different direction." Brenda made a note. "And they were supportive of this decision?" "Very." "So you left on good terms?" "Absolutely," Brenda smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "That's interesting, because I called Coastal Federal this morning. Spoke to Robert Chen. He's the new branch manager there. He said you were terminated for cause." The coffee shop noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversation, faded into a dull roar. "That's not," Diane started. "He also said you destroyed a customer's check and refused service based on appearance discrimination." Brenda set the resume down. "Now I appreciate you coming in today, but I think we're looking for someone with a stronger commitment to ethical customer service." It was a misunderstanding. Tearing up a $10 million check seems pretty straightforward. Brenda stood, collecting her papers. "Good luck with your search, Ms. Hargrove." She was gone before Diane could respond. Diane sat alone at the small table, her untouched latte going cold. Around her, people typed on laptops and scrolled through phones, living their ordinary lives. No one looked at her. No one cared that her career had just imploded in a coffee shop on a Thursday morning. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Is this Diane Hargrove?" She almost deleted it. Spam, probably. But something made her answer. Yes. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Sarah Thornhill. I'm a partner at Moss and Thornhill, and I heard about what happened at the bank. Diane's stomach twisted. She typed fast. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. If there's anything I can do... The response came quickly. Can we meet? I'd like to talk to you about something. The construction site was in the warehouse district, an old textile factory being converted into loft apartments. Sarah Thornhill met Diane at the entrance, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair pulled into a practical bun and blueprints rolled under one arm. Thank you for coming, Sarah said. She didn't offer to shake hands. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I almost didn't. Sarah gestured toward the building. But Vincent asked me to reach out, so here we are. They walked through the construction zone. Workers in hard hats moved around them, carrying materials, operating equipment. The smell of sawdust and fresh paint hung thick in the air. Vincent told you what happened? Diane asked. He told me you destroyed his check and called him a fraud in front of a crowded bank. Sarah stopped at a makeshift table covered in blueprints. He also said you looked terrified when your boss called. I was. Good. Sarah unrolled one of the blueprints, weighing down the corners with chunks of concrete. Fear is honest. It's the arrogance I can't stand. Diane didn't have an answer for that. Sarah studied the blueprint, structural plans for the building's west wing. Vincent started this company with my late husband 30 years ago. David died 6 years back. Heart attack on a job site. Vincent held his hand until the ambulance came. She traced a line on the blueprint with one finger. My husband built things his whole life. Houses, buildings, bridges. He had calluses so thick he could pick up hot coffee cups with his bare hands. And people looked at him the same way you looked at Vincent. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. Sarah looked up. Vincent's outside. He wants to talk to you himself. Diane's pulse jumped. I don't think that's a good idea. Neither do I, honestly, but he's stubborn. Sarah rolled up the blueprint. He's by the north scaffolding. The man in the red hard hat. Vincent was directing a crane operator, his voice clear and steady as he called out measurements. The crane lifted a steel beam into position, workers on the upper level guiding it into place. He didn't notice Diane until the beam was secured and the crane powered down. When he turned and saw her, his expression went carefully neutral. Ms. Hargrove. Mr. Moss. Her throat was tight. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Sarah agreed. I'm just not arguing. He pulled off his hard hat, wiped sweat from his forehead. Say what you need to say. Diane had prepared this, too. Another speech, rehearsed and polished, but standing here, watching this man who'd built things with his hands for 3 decades, the words felt hollow. I'm sorry, she said simply. I judged you. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Vincent studied her. You cost me half a day's work. Had to drive to First National, open new accounts, transfer everything over. Lost 3 hours I could have spent here. I know. You also cost that bank a lot more than 3 hours. He set his hard hat on a stack of lumber. James Keller called me personally. Apologized, said he'd handle it. I told him I didn't want anyone fired. I just wanted my money and my accounts moved. He said you needed to be fired anyway, said you had complaints. Diane's stomach dropped. Complaints? People you turned away. Small business owners mostly. Folks who didn't look the part. Vincent's eyes were steady on hers. Keller said he'd been reviewing your branch for months. What happened with me was just the last straw. The construction site sounds faded. Diane heard only the blood rushing in her ears. How many? She asked. He didn't give me a number. Vincent picked up a water bottle, took a long drink. Why are you here, Ms. Hargrove? Sarah said you wanted to meet, but I can't figure out why. I wanted to apologize in person. You did that already. I wanted to ask if there's anything I can do to make this right. Vincent laughed, a short, sharp sound. Make it right? You destroyed my check. You called me a liar. You made sure everyone in that bank knew you thought I was trash. He set the water bottle down. What exactly do you think you can do to make that right? Diane had no answer. Vincent turned back toward the building. I appreciate the apology. I do. But we're done here. Wait! The word came out desperate. Please, just tell me why Sarah asked me here if you didn't want to see me. He stopped, didn't turn around. Because Sarah thinks everyone deserves a second chance, he said quietly. Even people who wouldn't have given me one. Then he walked away, disappearing into the construction site. Sarah appeared at Diane's elbow. That went about how I expected. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He's disappointed. Sarah handed Diane a business card. Vincent's a better person than I am. If it were up to me, you'd never have gotten this meeting. But he insisted. So, here we are. Diane looked at the card. Sarah's contact information embossed on heavy stock. Why? Diane asked. Because 30 years ago, a bank manager in this city looked at Vincent the same way you did. Told him he'd never get a business loan, that construction workers didn't become company owners, that he should stick to what he knew. Sarah's voice was level, but something hard lived underneath it. That manager was wrong. Vincent got his loan from a different bank, built this company from nothing, and proved that assumptions are just expensive mistakes waiting to happen. She turned to leave, then paused. The difference is, Sarah said, that manager never apologized. You did. That's why you got this meeting. But apologies without change are just noise. The apartment was dark when Diane got home. She didn't turn on the lights, just sat on the couch in the shadows, Sarah's business card in her hand. Apologies without change are just noise. Her phone showed 6 missed calls, 3 from her mother, 2 from former colleagues, 1 from a recruiter. She ignored all of them. Instead, she opened her laptop and pulled up the termination letter from Coastal Federal. She'd been avoiding it for days, but now she read every word. Failure to adhere to customer service standards. Destruction of customer property. Discrimination based on appearance. Multiple complaints filed over the past 18 months. 18 months. Not 3 years, 18 months. She clicked through to her email archives, searching for anything flagged as complaint or customer concern. Most had been filtered to a folder she rarely checked, marked as resolved by her assistant manager. She opened them now. Mr. Torres came in to deposit cash from his landscaping business. Ms. Hargrove questioned whether the money was legitimate and suggested he provide tax documentation before she would accept the deposit. He closed his account the next day. Mrs. Kim requested a business loan for her dry cleaning expansion. Ms. Hargrove declined the application without review, stating that the market was oversaturated. Mrs. Kim obtained financing through First National, and her business has since doubled in size. Mr. Jackson attempted to cash a check from his contracting company. Ms. Hargrove held the check for 72 hours, pending verification, despite the account having sufficient funds. Mr. Jackson filed a formal complaint and moved his accounts. There were 7 more. Each one followed the same pattern. Someone who didn't fit Diane's mental image of success, questioned and dismissed, moving their business elsewhere. She'd never seen these complaints. Robert had handled them, marked them, resolved, buried them in folders she never opened. Diane closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The truth was simpler and uglier than she wanted to admit. She'd been a terrible branch manager. Not because she lacked skill or knowledge, but because she'd confused authority with judgment and judgment with wisdom. She'd built her career on being right, and she'd been wrong so many times she'd stopped counting. Her phone buzzed. I text from Robert. "Heard you met with Moss. How'd it go?" Diane stared at the message. Robert, who'd buried the complaints. Robert, who'd watched her turn Vincent away and said nothing. Robert, who now sat in her office behind her desk wearing her title. She deleted the message without responding. The job search was brutal. Every interview ended the same way. Polite interest until they called Coastal Federal for references, then silence. The banking industry in the city was small, and news traveled fast. The woman who'd torn up Vincent Moss's check was radioactive. By the end of the second week, Diane's savings had dropped below $10,000. By the end of the third, she was applying for teller positions, entry-level work she'd done 15 years ago. No one called back. She was sitting at her kitchen table, scrolling through job listings on her phone when the doorbell rang. Sarah Thornhill stood in the hallway, holding a folder. "I need to show you something," Sarah said. They sat at the table. Sarah opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. Construction projects, buildings in various states of completion. "Moss and Thornhill has 73 active projects," Sarah said. "Residential, commercial, municipal. We employ 412 people across 6 states." She spread the photos across the table. "Every single one of these projects requires financing. Permits, materials, payroll. We move millions of dollars every month." Diane looked at the photos. "I don't understand." "Vincent still does site work. Every morning he's out there in his boots and hard hat, checking welds and measuring concrete. He says it keeps him honest." Sarah pulled out another photo, Vincent on a roof surrounded by workers. "But it also means that twice a month he walks into a bank looking like a day laborer and tries to conduct business worth more than most people make in a lifetime. And people treat him the way I did. Some do." Sarah collected the photos. "Most just hesitate. They see the dirt and the calluses, and they pause. They verify a little harder. They ask a few more questions. It's subtle, but it's there." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah closed the folder. "Because Vincent wants to hire you." The words didn't make sense. Diane heard them, but they didn't connect to anything real. "Hire me?" "He needs someone to handle the banking relationships, someone who understands how these institutions work, who can smooth out the process so he doesn't have to waste time proving he's not a fraud every time he needs to move money." Sarah's expression was unreadable. "He thinks you'd be good at it." "After what I did to him?" "Because of what you did to him." Sarah stood. "He figures if you understand how badly you failed, you won't fail the same way twice, and he likes that you apologized. Most people never do." Diane's hand shook. "I don't deserve this." "Probably not." Sarah headed toward the door, then stopped. "But Vincent believes in second chances. And I trust his judgment even when I don't agree with it." She left the folder on the table. Inside was a job offer letter, a contract and a salary that was twice what she'd made as branch manager. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note on yellow legal paper. "Everyone makes mistakes. The question is what you do after." Vincent. The Moss and Thornhill office was in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Diane showed up on Monday morning at 7, the way the offer letter specified. Vincent was already there, drinking coffee from a metal thermos. "You're early," he said. "I didn't want to be late." "Good." He gestured toward a desk in the corner, clean, organized, with a new computer and a nameplate that read, "Diane Hargrove, Financial Operations." "Sarah will walk you through the accounts. We've got banking relationships with 4 institutions. You'll be point of contact for all of them." Diane set her bag down. "Why are you doing this?" Vincent looked at her for a long moment. You know what the worst part was? Not the check. Not being called a liar. It was the look on your face when you tore it up, like you'd already decided who I was before I said a word. "I'm sorry." "I know." He took another sip of coffee. "But sorry doesn't teach you anything. Working here will." Sarah appeared with a stack of account files. "Ready?" Diane nodded. "Good," Sarah said. "First lesson. Half the people we work with will underestimate Vincent. Your job is to make sure they don't underestimate the company. Think you can handle that?" Diane looked at Vincent, standing there in his work jeans and faded company shirt, holding a thermos instead of a briefcase. "Yes," she said. "We'll see." Sarah dropped the files on Diane's desk. "Let's get started." The first month was humbling. Diane learned that Moss and Thornhill operated on razor-thin margins despite the impressive project portfolio. Every dollar mattered. Every delayed payment created a cascade of problems. And Vincent's insistence on paying workers above market rate meant that profit existed only in the spaces between perfect execution and disaster. She also learned that Vincent's appearance wasn't carelessness. It was principle. He refused to manage from a distance. If there was a problem on a site, he was there, in the dirt, solving it. "People work harder when they know you'll do the same job you're asking them to do," he told her once, after she'd suggested he might want to dress differently for a meeting with a new bank. The meeting had been predictable. The loan officer, a young man in an expensive suit, had looked at Vincent the way Diane used to look at people, with polite skepticism, with assumptions. And Diane had watched Vincent handle it with the same calm he'd shown in the bank that day. He'd presented the financials, answered every question, and left the meeting with the loan approved. Afterward, in the parking lot, she'd asked him how he stayed so patient. "I spent 30 years proving myself," Vincent said. "Every day, every job. At some point you realize the problem isn't you, it's them. And once you know that, their doubt stops mattering. But it still costs you time." "Everything costs time." He unlocked his truck. "The question is whether you spend it being angry or being effective." Diane had gone home that night and thrown out every piece of clothing she'd worn at Coastal Federal. The suits, the heels, the jewelry. All of it went into donation bags, shipped off to a women's shelter. She bought work boots the next day. 3 months into the job, Diane was reviewing loan applications when her phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Diane." "Ms. Hargrove, this is James Keller." She sat up straight, nearly knocking over her coffee. "Mr. Keller." "I heard you're working for Moss and Thornhill now." "Yes, sir. I started in January." "Good." A pause. "I'm calling because I owe you an explanation. When I fired you, I told you that Vincent's situation was the last straw. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." Diane's grip tightened on the phone. "I've owned that building for 12 years, Keller continued. "I don't get involved in branch operations normally. But I received a complaint 6 months before your incident with Vincent. A woman named Maria Torres. Her husband had tried to deposit cash from his landscaping business. And you'd questioned the legitimacy of the money." The name hit like a punch. "Mr. Torres, the first complaint in the file." "Mrs. Torres wrote me directly," Keller said. "Told me her husband had worked 18-hour days for 30 years to build that business. That he'd never bounced a check, never missed a payment, never given anyone a reason to doubt him. And you made him feel like a criminal because he brought in cash that smelled like grass clippings." Diane closed her eyes. "I started reviewing your branch after that," Keller said. "Found 8 more complaints, same pattern, same assumptions. I was planning to fire you already. Vincent's check just gave me cause. Why are you telling me this now? Because Vincent called me yesterday, said you've been doing excellent work, that you've renegotiated 3 of their banking contracts and saved his company $200,000 in fees. Another pause. He also said you cry in your car sometimes after difficult meetings, that you're trying to be better. Diane's throat closed. I don't forgive easily, Keller said, but I believe in accountability. You lost your job because you earned it. If you're earning a second chance now, that's worth acknowledging. The call ended. Diane sat at her desk, staring at the phone. Around her, the office hummed with activity. Sarah on a conference call, project managers reviewing blueprints, the coffee maker gurgling in the break room. She thought about Maria Torres, writing a letter to a building owner because a bank manager had made her husband feel small. She thought about the 7 other people she'd never met, I'd never apologized to. She pulled up her computer and opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "People I owe amends." Then she started making a list. The amends took 6 months. Some were simple. Tracked down Mr. Torres and wrote him a letter, included a check for the fees Coastal Federal had charged during the verification hold. He never responded, but he cashed the check. Others were harder. Mrs. Kim's dry cleaning business had expanded to 3 locations. Diane drove 2 hours to meet her, waited outside the flagship store until closing, and apologized in the parking lot. Mrs. Kim had listened, arms crossed, then said, "Thank you for coming. Now please leave." Diane left. Mr. Jackson had moved to another state. Diane tracked down his new address and sent a letter. It came back unopened. "I return to sender," scrawled across the envelope in angry red ink. She kept the envelope in her desk drawer. A reminder. By summer, Moss and Thornhill had landed the biggest contract in company history. A municipal project to renovate the old courthouse downtown, $40 million. 2 years of work. Vincent brought in Diane to negotiate the financing. The bank meeting was set for a Tuesday morning. Diane arrived early, carrying 3 briefcases full of documentation. Project plans, financial statements, contractor certifications. She'd prepared for 2 weeks, rehearsed every possible question. Vincent arrived 15 minutes late, wearing jeans and a company polo shirt, dust from a morning site visit still on his boots. The bank's senior vice president, a woman named Patricia with sharp eyes and sharper questions, looked at Vincent the way Diane used to look at people. "Mr. Moss," Patricia said slowly, "I appreciate you taking time out of your workday to meet with us." Diane saw the condescension, heard it, felt it like a familiar weight. She opened her mouth to intervene, to smooth it over, to be the buffer between Vincent's appearance and Patricia's assumptions. Then she stopped. Vincent smiled. "Happy to be here. Diane's put together the full financial package. You'll find everything in order." He gestured to Diane. She opened the first briefcase and began presenting. Balance sheets, cash flow projections, risk assessments. Every number precise. Every document indexed and cross-referenced. Patricia listened, her expression shifting from skeptical to focused to impressed. Halfway through the presentation, she interrupted. "Ms. Hargrove, this is extremely thorough." "Thank you. May I ask, how long have you been in commercial finance?" 6 months, Diane said. "Before that, I was in retail banking." "Which bank?" "Coastal Federal. I was the branch manager." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "The 7th Street location?" "Yes. I know James Keller. He mentioned they'd had some management changes." Patricia glanced at Vincent. "Small world." "Very small," Vincent said. They finished the presentation. Patricia excused herself to consult with her team. Diane and Vincent waited in the conference room, not speaking. When Patricia returned, she was smiling. "The loan is approved," she said. "Pending final review, but I don't anticipate any issues." She extended her hand to Vincent. "Congratulations, Mr. Moss. This is an impressive project." Vincent shook her hand. "Thank you." Diane did the heavy lifting. "I can see that." Patricia turned to Diane. "If you ever consider coming back to banking, we'd be interested in speaking with you." After the meeting, in the parking lot, Vincent leaned against his truck and laughed. "What?" Diane asked. She thought I was the hired muscle. "You were the brains. That's not funny. It's a little funny." Vincent's smile faded. "You handled it well. Didn't try to explain me. Just did the work. I learned from the best." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Sarah's throwing a dinner tomorrow night to celebrate the contract. You should come." "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. You're part of the team." He opened his truck door. 6 o'clock. Bring wine if you want, but Sarah's cooking, so don't bring expectations." The dinner was at Sarah's house, a small craftsman bungalow with a garden that looked like organized chaos. 20 people crowded into the dining room, project managers, site supervisors, office staff. Diane knew most of them by now, had worked with them on various projects. She still felt like an outsider. Sarah cornered her in the kitchen while pulling a roast from the oven. "You're hovering," Sarah said. "I'm helping." "You're hovering." Sarah set the roast on the counter. "Relax, these people don't bite. They know who I am. What I did. They know you work hard and fix their banking problems." Sarah started carving. The past matters less when you're useful in the present. Through the doorway, Diane could see Vincent talking with a group of workers, everyone laughing at something he'd said. He looked different here, looser, lighter, like the weight he carried on job sites and in bank meetings had been set down for the evening. "He's good to his people," Diane said. "He is." Sarah arranged sliced meat on a platter. "My husband used to say that Vincent could sell ice to penguins, but he'd feel guilty about it afterward. That's why David handled sales and Vincent handled everything else." "Do you miss him? Your husband?" "Every day." Sarah's hand stilled on the knife. "But David built this company to last, and Vincent made sure it did. So in a way, he's still here." Dinner was loud and chaotic. People talked over each other. I told stories about job site disasters and near misses, argued good-naturedly about sports teams and construction techniques. Diane sat between a project manager named Carlos and a structural engineer named Lynn, listening more than talking. After dinner, Vincent stood and tapped his glass. "Quick announcement," he said. "Most of you know we landed the courthouse contract. What you don't know is that it almost didn't happen." The room quieted. 3 banks turned us down before we found one that would listen," Vincent continued. "They looked at our financials and saw risk. They looked at me and saw—" He gestured at his worn jeans, his company shirt. "Well, they saw what they wanted to see." A few knowing chuckles rippled through the room. "But Diane—" Vincent nodded toward her. She walked into every meeting with 3 briefcases full of proof that we knew what we were doing. She answered every question. She made them see the company, not just the guy in the work boots." "Hear, hear," someone called out. "So here's to Diane," Vincent raised his glass, "for making us look legitimate." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Diane felt her face burn, but she raised her glass and smiled. Later, when people had migrated to the living room and the conversation had splintered into smaller groups, Vincent found her on the back porch. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm good." She looked out at Sarah's garden, dark except for string lights hung between the trees. "Thank you for the toast." "I meant it." "I know." She turned to face him. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you really hire me?" Sarah said you believe in second chances, but there are a lot of people who deserve second chances." "Why me?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. "You remember what you said in the bank? When I told you the check was real?" "I said a lot of things. You said I should use the general teller line, like I didn't know how banks worked, like I was too stupid to understand procedure." He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "That's what got me. Not the torn check. That moment when you explained something to me like I was a child." Diane's stomach turned. "I've dealt with that my whole life," Vincent said. "People assuming I'm less intelligent because I work with my hands. And I realized, you weren't unique. You were just honest about it. Most people hide it better." "That doesn't answer my question." "I hired you because you were willing to apologize, and because I thought working here might teach you something that losing your job couldn't." He looked at her. "Did it?" Diane thought about the past 6 months, the meetings, the negotiations, the moment in Patricia's office when she'd almost intervened to defend Vincent, then stopped herself and trusted him to handle it. "Yes," she said. "Good." Vincent headed back inside. That's what second chances are for. The courthouse renovation broke ground in September. Diane stood with Vincent and Sarah at the site, watching the excavation crew tear into the foundation. The building was over 100 years old, all limestone and marble, built when craftsmanship meant something beyond profit margins. It's going to be beautiful," Sarah said. "It's going to be expensive," Vincent replied. But he was smiling. They'd locked in the financing 2 weeks earlier, $40 million, distributed over 2 years, with quarterly reviews. Diane had negotiated terms that gave them flexibility if the timeline shifted, which it would. It always did. The press was there. Local news covering the groundbreaking, reporters interviewing the mayor and city council members. One reporter approached Vincent. "Mr. Moss, what does this project mean for your company?" Vincent glanced at Diane, then back at the reporter. "It means we get to save something worth saving. This building's been standing for 100 years. We're just making sure it stands for 100 more." "And what about Moss and Thornhill? What does this say about the company's growth?" "It says we're good at what we do." Vincent's tone was firm. "And that we've got a team that knows how to turn plans into reality." The reporter moved on to interview Sarah. Diane watched Vincent head toward the excavation crew, already checking the work. She pulled out her phone and took a picture. Vincent, in his hard hat and boots, standing in front of the courthouse, pointing at something on the foundation while the crew listened. Later, she'd add it to the project file. But for now, she just wanted to remember this moment, the beginning of something bigger than either of them. 4 months into the courthouse project, Diane got a call from Patricia at the bank. "We need to meet," Patricia said. "Can you come in tomorrow?" "Is there a problem?" "Just come in." Diane spent the drive to the bank running through worst-case scenarios. The loan was being recalled. The project was over budget. Some compliance issue she'd missed. Patricia met her in a conference room. No briefcases this time, no formal presentation. Just the two of them and coffee. "I'm leaving the bank," Patricia said. Diane blinked. "What?" "I got an offer from a private equity firm. More money, better hours, a chance to work on bigger deals." Patricia smiled. "I'm taking it." "Congratulations." "Thank you." Patricia poured coffee. "But that's not why you're here. I'm recommending you for my position." The words took a moment to land. "Your position," Diane repeated slowly. "Senior Vice President of Commercial Lending. You'd be managing a team of 12. I's handling all major commercial accounts in the region. Patricia slid a folder across the table. I've already spoken to the board. They're interested. Diane opened the folder. Inside was a job description, a salary range that made her breath catch, and a letter from the bank's CEO requesting an interview. Why me? Diane asked. Because in 6 months you've handled one of the most complex commercial loan packages I've seen. Because you're detail-oriented, you're thorough, and you don't make assumptions. Patricia paused. And because I called James Keller for a reference, and he told me what happened at Coastal Federal. Diane's stomach dropped. He said you made mistakes, Patricia continued. Serious ones. But that you owned them and changed, that's rare. She gestured to the folder. Look, I could recommend someone with 20 years of experience and no stains on their record. But I'd rather recommend someone who knows how badly things can go wrong when you judge people by their appearance. Diane looked at the folder, at the salary, at the title. Then she closed it and slid it back across the table. I can't, she said. Patricia's eyebrows rose. Can't or won't? Both. Diane stood. I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I'm not ready. And more importantly, I have a commitment to Moss and Thornhill. The courthouse project runs for another 20 months. I'm not walking away in the middle. They'd understand. This is a career opportunity. I know. Diane picked up her bag. But 6 months ago, Vincent Moss gave me a second chance when no one else would. I'm not repaying that by leaving him before the job is done. Patricia studied her for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. Even though this position might not be available later? Even though. Patricia smiled. You know what? I think I recommended the right person after all. She stood and extended her hand. The offer stands. If you change your mind in 2 years, call me. Diane shook her hand. Thank you, but I won't change my mind. She told Vincent about the offer that evening after the site crew had gone home. They were in the courthouse, standing in what would eventually be the main lobby. The space was gutted now, exposed pipes and electrical raw concrete floors, but you could see the bones of something beautiful underneath. You should take it, Vincent said. I already turned it down. Why? Because I made a commitment. Vincent turned to look at her. Diane, I hired you to do a job. You've done it. Better than I expected, honestly, but I didn't hire you to be loyal. I hired you to be good at what you do. And part of being good is finishing what I start. Even if it costs you? Especially then. Diane looked around the gutted lobby. You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. I'm not walking away before this building is finished. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. You know Sarah said you'd say that? She did? She bet me $20. He smiled. I told her you'd take the job. She said you were too stubborn. She was right. She usually is. Vincent headed toward the exit. Come on, I'll buy you dinner to celebrate your terrible career decisions. They went to a diner near the site, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. Vincent ordered a burger. Diane ordered soup. Can I ask you something? Diane said. Sure. Do you ever regret it? Staying hands-on with the work? You could hire people to do the site management. You could wear a suit and run things from an office. Vincent considered the question while he chewed. My dad was a carpenter. Worked residential construction his whole life. When I was a kid, he'd bring me to sites, let me help with small stuff. Measuring, carrying tools. He paused. One day I asked him why he didn't start his own company. He said, because then I'd have to stop doing the work I love and start managing people who do. But you started a company. I did. And I manage people. but I never stopped doing the work. Vincent gestured around the diner. This business, construction, it's about building things that last. You can't do that from an office. You have to be there, in the dirt, making sure every beam is straight and every weld is solid. Even if people judge you for it. Especially then. Vincent smiled. The second I start caring more about what bankers think than what my crew knows, that's the day I've failed. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, traffic moved past the windows, people heading home from work, from school, from wherever their lives took them. Diane thought about the job offer, the title, the salary, the chance to rebuild her career in a direction that made sense, that looked impressive on paper. Then she thought about the courthouse, 20 months of work ahead, problems to solve, details to manage. The choice wasn't even close. The courthouse opened 18 months later, 2 months ahead of schedule. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was on a Saturday morning. The mayor was there, along with city council members, donors, and half the local press. The building gleamed, all restored limestone and marble, the original architecture preserved while the interior had been modernized for 21st century use. Diane stood with the Moss and Thornhill team, watching Vincent give a speech about preservation and craftsmanship. He wore a suit for the occasion, the first time she'd ever seen him in one, but his hands still bore the calluses and scars of someone who worked with them. Sarah leaned over and whispered, "He hates that suit. I can tell. He'll be back in jeans by noon." The mayor cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. People streamed into the building for tours, marveling at the restored details, the original woodwork, the marble columns, the mosaic tile floors that the crew had cleaned and repaired by hand. Diane found Vincent in the main lobby, standing alone, looking up at the vaulted ceiling. "Beautiful work," she said, "thanks to a good team." He looked at her. "And good financial management. We came in under budget, that's rare. Only by 2%. 2% is 2%. Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. Patricia just texted. She wants to know if you've reconsidered her offer." "What did you tell her?" "I haven't replied yet. Wanted to check with you first." He pocketed the phone. "Have you reconsidered?" Diane looked around the lobby, at the restored building, at the people moving through it, appreciating something that had been saved rather than demolished. "No," she said. "I haven't." "Good." Vincent extended his hand. "Because I've got another project starting next month. Municipal library, 8 miles from here. Needs the same treatment. Preservation, modernization, tight budget. Interested?" She shook his hand. "Absolutely." 2 years later, Diane sat in a coffee shop across from a young woman named Michelle. Michelle was 26, recently fired from her job as a loan officer at a regional bank. So she'd made a mistake, approved a loan without proper verification, cost the bank money, lost her position. She was desperate. Diane could see it in the way her hands shook around her coffee cup. "Thank you for meeting me," Michelle said. "I know you don't know me, but I saw your name on the Moss and Thornhill website and I didn't know who else to call." "What do you need?" Diane asked. "Advice? Help?" "I don't know." Michelle's voice cracked. "I messed up. I lost my job. And now no one will hire me because I made one mistake." Diane remembered sitting in this same coffee shop 3 years ago, watching Brenda walk away. "Tell me about the mistake," she said. Michelle explained, a small business owner looking for expansion capital. The financials had seemed solid. Michelle had approved the loan. 2 months later, the business folded. The owner disappeared. The bank lost $80,000. "And you didn't verify the owner's background?" Diane asked. "I did. But not thoroughly enough. I missed red flags. I wanted to help and I rushed the process." Michelle set down her cup. Everyone keeps telling me I should have known better, that I was too trusting, that I let my emotions override my judgment. They're probably right, Michelle flinched. But being right doesn't make them helpful, Diane continued. You made a mistake, a serious one. The question isn't whether you deserved to lose your job. You probably did. The question is what you're going to do now. I don't know. Then figure it out. Diane pulled out her phone and opened her contacts. I'm sending you 3 names, people who work in commercial finance, who might be willing to give you a chance if you prove you've learned from this. Michelle's eyes widened. You'd do that for me? Someone did it for me once. Diane sent the contacts, but understand, these people will ask you hard questions. They'll want to know what changed. They won't hire you out of pity or charity. They'll hire you if you convince them you're worth the risk. How do I do that? By being honest about what you did wrong, by showing them you've done the work to understand why it happened, and by proving, through action, not words, that you won't make the same mistake twice. Michelle's phone buzzed with the incoming contacts. She stared at the screen. Why are you helping me? She asked. Diane thought about Vincent, standing in that bank 3 years ago, holding a torn check. Because someone gave me a second chance, she said, and second chances work better when you pay them forward. The library project finished 6 months ahead of schedule. Moss and Thornhill's reputation had grown. They were now the go-to firm for historic preservation and rehabilitation in the region. The courthouse and library projects had won awards. The company had expanded to 200 more employees. Vincent still showed up to sites every morning in his work boots. Diane still carried 3 briefcases to every bank meeting. Some things didn't need to change. On the day the library opened, Sarah found Diane in the new reading room, a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows and restored oak shelving. Vincent wants to see you in his office, Sarah said. Diane followed her back to the main building. Vincent's office was unchanged from 3 years ago, still cluttered with blueprints and project photos, still smelling faintly of coffee and sawdust. He was waiting with a folder. Sit, he said. She sat. Vincent slid the folder across the desk. Partnership agreement. If you sign, you become a partner in Moss and Thornhill. Equal ownership with Sarah and me. Equal say in company decisions. Equal share of profits. Diane opened the folder. The contract was thorough. Pages of legal language, profit-sharing arrangements, buyout clauses. Why? She asked. Because this company is bigger than me now. Bigger than Sarah. We need someone who understands the financial side, who can grow us without losing what makes us good. Vincent leaned back in his chair. You've earned it. Multiple times over. Diane looked at the contract. At the signature line. I need to think about it, she said. Take your time. She went home that night and sat with the contract. Read every page. Considered every implication. Partnership meant commitment. It meant tying herself to this company, to Vincent's vision, to the work they did. It also meant letting go of the idea that she might return to traditional banking someday, that she might rebuild her old career, reclaim her old title. This was a different path, one she'd stumbled onto by accident, through failure and consequences and the unlikely grace of a man she'd wronged. She thought about the check she'd torn, about the assumptions she'd made, about every mistake that had led her here. Then she signed the contract. The call from James Keller came a week later. Congratulations on the partnership, he said. Thank you. How did you know? Vincent told me. He's proud of you. Keller paused. I'm calling because I have a proposition. I'm listening. I'm selling the building that houses Coastal Federal. The bank is moving to a newer location, and I've decided to convert the space into mixed-use development. Retail on the first floor, offices above. Diane waited. I'd like Moss and Thornhill to handle the renovation, Keller said. If you're interested. The irony wasn't lost on her. You want us to renovate the bank where I used to work. I want you to renovate it because you understand what that building represents. Mistakes, consequences, the possibility of becoming something better. Keller's voice was steady. It's a good building. It deserves a second chance, too. Diane thought about the marble counter where she'd stood 3 years ago, the glass walls of her old office, the polished floors that had reflected her certainty back at her. Send us the proposal, she said. We'll review it. Already on its way. The proposal arrived 2 hours later. Diane read through it with Sarah and Vincent, the three of them crowded around the conference table. It's ambitious, Sarah said. It's expensive, Vincent added. It's perfect, Diane said. They took the project. The renovation took 8 months. Diane walked through the building every week, watching it transform. The bank teller stations were removed, replaced with open retail space. Her old office became part of a larger suite. The vault was converted into a private event room. The marble counter stayed. Diane insisted on it. On opening day, the building barely resembled the bank she remembered. It was lighter, more open. The retail spaces were filled with local businesses. A bookstore, a coffee roaster, a gallery. The offices upstairs housed small tech startups and creative firms. Vincent found her standing in the lobby, looking at the preserved marble counter. You okay? He asked. I'm good. She ran her hand along the cool stone. This is where it happened. Where I tore up your check. I remember. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd just walked away? Never came back? Never filed a complaint? Vincent considered the question. Probably nothing. You'd still be branch manager. I'd still be banking at First National. And we'd both be fine. But not better. No, not better. He looked around the renovated space. Funny how the worst moments sometimes lead to the best outcomes. Only if you let them. True. Vincent checked his watch. Sarah's waiting. We've got another project meeting in 20 minutes. They left the building together. Diane took one last look at the marble counter, the place where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. Then she followed Vincent out into the afternoon sun toward whatever came next. If you've ever judged someone by their appearance, made an assumption that cost them dignity, or let your certainty override someone else's truth, you're not alone. The question isn't whether you've made mistakes. It's what you're willing to do about them. Real change doesn't come from apologies. It comes from action. From showing up. From doing the work to understand why you were wrong and choosing differently next time. Second chances aren't given. They're earned. And they work best when you pay them forward. What's the assumption you need to challenge today?